You are standing in a hole in the ground. Somewhere ahead, past the treeline, past the rubble of what used to be a settlement, past 3 kilometers of churned mud and burnt wire, something very large is moving toward the line. You cannot see it. That is specifically your problem. Artillery in the 41st millennium is not a glamorous posting. Nobody commissions a mural of the crew who fires the shell. The mural goes to the soldier who plants the banner in the wreckage afterward, which is fine because that soldier would not be standing there without you. The Imperium of Man, roughly 1 million worlds held together by bureaucratic inertia and the constant threat of institutional violence, has never been interested in distributing credit accurately. What it wants is output. Shells downrange, on target, on schedule, in the quantities specified by a firing table written by a logistics officer who has never stood within 4 kilometers of live engagement. Welcome to the Astra Militarum. Pull your hearing protection down. Your official designation is Artillery Corps attached to a siege or fire support regiment. The specific platform depends on which of the Imperium's 1,000 forge worlds stamped your equipment. You might crew a Basilisk, a self-propelled gun on a Chimera chassis, firing the Earthshaker cannon, a weapon with a range measured in kilometers, and a shell casing roughly the height of a standing man. You might run a Medusa, a shorter-range siege gun built to crack bunkers, which in artillery terms means you are close enough to the problem to find it deeply personal. High Command occasionally assigns crew to a Manticore, a multi-launch rocket system that fires Storm Eagle rockets, capable of saturating a target zone the size of a small district. Each platform has its own character. Each one is trying to kill you in slightly different ways. The Earthshaker's recoil is violent enough to fracture the wrists of crew members who position themselves incorrectly during the firing sequence. This is in the manual. The manual exists in a dialect of High Gothic that your regiment's translator rendered into something functionally readable sometime in the last decade. You learned about the wrists on the 3rd day of your first deployment from a senior crewman named Veth, who showed you his left arm and said nothing further on the subject. You are awake before the light changes. On contested worlds, where the upper atmosphere has been processing industrial combustion output for generations, the light does not always change in ways that correspond to planetary rotation. The sky above the forward battery position is the color of an old bruise. The smell of propellant residue from last night's fire mission has settled into your uniform, your gear, the interior of your mouth despite the respirator you sleep in on active deployment. A Basilisk crew runs 6 to 8 personnel. A commander who translates targeting coordinates from the fire direction team into actionable gun data. A driver and vehicle commander. A gunner handling elevation and traverse. At least 2 loaders, because the Earthshaker round does not load itself and the rate of fire the commissariat expects is not achievable with 1 pair of hands. Depending on the day and current attrition status, you are potentially filling 2 of these roles at once. First task of the morning is the maintenance sequence. Every surface that moves gets checked. Every seal gets inspected. The barrel assembly receives a cleaning protocol that takes 40 minutes when performed correctly, and that nobody outside a training barracks has completed in under 25. The recoil mechanism is what will kill you if you skip it, not dramatically, just mechanically. A compromised buffer system transfers shock force into the chassis in ways the vehicle was not designed to absorb. You have watched a Basilisk knock itself off its trail spades from a cracked buffer assembly and go over into a trench. You perform the maintenance sequence the prescribed way, every time, regardless of what the night was like. The weapon functions because the maintenance was performed. That is the full relationship between cause and outcome as you understand it from field experience. The call comes through the Vox outside the scheduled fire support window. Either the forward infantry found their problem early, or it found them first. The fire direction officer transmits a grid reference, a target type classification, an ammunition requirement, and a priority code. You do not see the target. You will never see the target. What you have is a set of numbers describing a location on a map grid, and your job is to place a 47-kilogram projectile onto that location from a distance that makes direct observation impossible. The mathematics are not simple. Charge weight, selection, determines muzzle velocity. Muzzle velocity determines trajectory. Arc interacts with everything your crew measured this morning. Temperature, barometric pressure, wind at altitude, propellant temperature variance. At 4 kilometers, 1 mil of azimuth error produces 4 meters of lateral displacement at the target. 4 meters is the difference between the round landing on the vehicle column and the round landing on the personnel moving beside it. Command decides which outcome they want. You produce it if the calculations are correct, the platform is functioning, the round is within specification, and the weather data is still current. The loader does not wait for you to finish thinking. The round goes into the breach because the priority code said immediate suppression, and immediate means the first round exits before the backup calculation is fully verified. That protocol violation occurs in roughly 30% of emergency fire missions in active contact based on what you have personally observed in this regiment. The Earthshaker fires. It is not loud in the way a nearby explosion is loud. It is pressure. It starts in your chest and moves outward. Your vision snaps at the edges from the concussive wave through the hearing protection. The casing ejects backward with enough force to remove a limb from anyone standing in the wrong position. The gun displaces backward along its trail spades by several centimeters despite weighing 37 tons. You are already calling out the next charge selection before the shell reaches the target. The forward observer will transmit a correction if one is needed. Until it arrives, you assume the mission continues. After 3 rounds, a competent enemy sound-ranging team has your position. This is not a theory. Every artillery crewman understands it, and nobody discusses it at length, because discussing it at length does not change the mathematics. Enemy forces with aerial observation assets can do it faster. The counter-battery mission is coming. It will arrive as multiple rounds saturating the most probable gun positions, because enemy fire planning assumes you are placed in a standard battery formation. You are in a standard battery formation. There are only so many configurations that provide the required fire support coverage, and the enemy knows which configurations the Imperium uses, and everyone involved is fully aware of what happens next. You move, shoot and scoot is not a doctrine every artillery commander applies with enthusiasm because repositioning takes time, and during that time your gun cannot fire and the infantry in contact are without support. You make this trade repeatedly across a sustained engagement, judging when the counter-battery threat has crossed the threshold where staying destroys the gun permanently versus when moving costs the infantry a window they cannot absorb. The commander makes the call. You execute it. You are already climbing into the crew compartment before the tracks engage, because the window between the decision and the movement is shorter than it looks from outside the vehicle. A single Astra Militarum siege regiment fields multiple batteries. A major planetary assault might run hundreds of artillery pieces simultaneously, each tasked independently, all feeding into a fire direction center managing the full grid across a dozen communication channels at once. The Imperium does not win through superior individual skill. It wins through weight. Weight of ordnance, weight of numbers, weight of institutional willingness to absorb casualties that would constitute catastrophic failure in any smaller conflict. Your regiment has been assigned a daily round tithe. That figure does not adjust for crew losses, equipment attrition, or the fact that the resupply column carrying your propellant charges was hit 3 days ago, and your remaining stock is being rationed against a priority list that was written before anyone knew how few rounds you had left. You report the ammunition status up the chain. The chain acknowledges. 6 hours later, a revised allocation figure arrives from logistics. It is identical to the original. You log this and continue the mission. When the fire mission ends, you get 2 to 4 hours before the next tasking, assuming no emergency interrupts it. The crew inspects the platform for battle damage, logs rounds fired, documents each mission, and runs immediate maintenance on components that took abnormal stress. The loader who worked the breach for 6 straight hours sits down on the trail spade and does not move for a while. His hearing protection has had a seal failure on the left side since this morning. He reported it. The equipment pool is managing 17 other priority requests, so it has not been addressed. He will submit the report again in the post-mission log. It will be addressed when it is addressed. The commander is on the Vox with the fire direction officer reviewing mission records. Target confirmation has not come back for 4 of the 7 fire missions. 2 of the forward observers are not responding on any channel. This is being noted. Conclusions are not yet being drawn. You eat a ration pack against the track housing, where residual heat from the drive system keeps the temperature fractionally above the ambient air, which is cold in the way a world under active orbital bombardment is cold. The upper atmosphere is processing more particulate than usual, and the surface temperature is erratic. The ration pack contains a compressed protein block and a sealed container of something described to you once as nutritionally complete. You have decided to accept that as the complete description and not pursue it further. You file this day in the same category as the ones before it. Present, functional, accounted for. Tomorrow the tithe does not decrease. The Earthshaker does not factor in your fatigue. The grid does not move because the crew needs rest. You pull the hearing protection back down. The Vox is already active.